everyone. My name is Wendy Maldonado D'Amico, and I would like to welcome everyone here to our November Inspirational Speaker Series talk through 1863 Ventures. 1863 Ventures is a nonprofit business accelerator and fund for Black and Latinx entrepreneurs across the United States. We are based in Washington, D.C. Our mission is to accelerate new majority entrepreneurs from high potential to high growth. We are dedicated and aiming to create $100 billion of new wealth for the new majority by 2030. So that is why we exist. What I would like to do is introduce our speaker for today. I'm so pleased to welcome all of you from the 1863 community, as well as friends of 1863. And I want to greet our November inspirational speaker, Tracy Graham. So Tracy, welcome. I'm going to just say a few words about you, not the big long bio, because I know there's a big long bio. So Tracy is the founder and managing principal of Graham Allen Partners. It is a private equity firm that specializes in acquiring and building technology-enabled businesses. Prior to Graham Allen Partners, Tracy founded Internet Services Management Group and also co-founded Graham Tell in partnership with the Jordan Company. He is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame, where he was recruited to play football, and he played there all 4 years. And he also sits on the boards of 2 publicly traded companies. He sits on the board of First Source, which is a regional community bank. And he also is the chairman of the board of Lippert Components. And finally, last but not least, he is a trustee of the University of Notre Dame, which I mean, to go from being a student and playing football, now you're a trustee of Notre Dame. Wow. Okay. So wow on all those boards. So Tracy, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We are so thrilled, Tracy. So I wanted to just let everybody know what our format for today will be. You and I are going to just have a conversation for the next half an hour or so. For those of you who are tuning in, I would encourage you to drop your information into the chat. Please drop in your name, your website, your LinkedIn. We would love to see who is here for this conversation, especially for those of you who are here from the 1863 community. And then I also want to encourage you to drop questions into the chat or Q&A for Tracy, so that I will leave time at the end, the last 15 minutes or so, for Tracy to answer any questions you might have based on the conversation that we have today. So please drop your information into the chat and drop your questions into the chat. So, okay, excellent. So without further ado, Tracy, first, we would love to hear more about you. So talk to us. Where did all this start? Like you're from Chicago, right? So talk to us about your early years.
Well, the first thing I'll say, Wendy, is that hearing you give that bio and hearing you talk about Notre Dame and all those things, I almost feel like you're talking about somebody else, not me. I'm not that important. And I think as I tell you a little bit about my background, you'll realize that I'm just a normal guy who is just so blessed and lucky to have been able to come across paths with some really generous individuals. So I'm originally from, I was born and raised in the city of Chicago and in a community, the Inglewood district of Chicago. Now, most of you who are, I suspect most from the DC area, would understand that Inglewood is for Chicago for a time there, even in the last few years, was Chicago sort of had risen to a negative status as the murder capital of the country, and Inglewood was the murder capital of Chicago. So if you think about it in that sense, now it's gotten a little worse, but when I grew up there, it was pretty much, that was my environment, in the Inglewood environment. I was fortunate enough to, after attending some public schools that were maybe not so good in my early days. I was able to go to St. Rita High School, which is a local high school in Chicago. That's a story all within itself, about going from, 100% African-American sort of neighborhood and living in that environment, and then going to a 97% white high school. That was an experience dealing and juggling that on a daily basis. But I graduated from St. Rita High School in 91, then went to the University of Notre Dame. I did play football for Notre Dame. I played for Lou Holtz. For many people on the call, they may know of Coach Holtz. So I played for Lou Holtz with Jerome Bettis. Some of you might know him as the Bus, and who is my very, very good friend and is a big part of my story as well, having loaned me the first money to start my first business. Jerome did that. And then so I graduated Notre Dame in 1995 and pretty much immediately started as an entrepreneur. So I started my first company in 96, which you mentioned was Internet Services Management Group, and got some investors and did all that stuff. So that's if you go way back to sort of my origin story, if you will, it's being the only boy, the youngest boy of three girls. Well, I have three older sisters, a single mom who we struggled quite a bit. And she tried to make ends meet, I won't even just say not a college graduate, but not a high school graduate, my mom, but she believed in me and did everything she could to help me, really get out of Inglewood. That was the mission at the time, and she did that. And so that's who I am. That's where I come from. And, all this other stuff you hear today is just, it's the icing on the cake, I would say, not the core of me is still in Chicago and in Inglewood. It's who I am.
Interesting. So the idea that your mom was so dedicated to making sure that you got out of Inglewood, I'm curious about the kind of story of you getting to St. Rita and then going on to Notre Dame. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that seems to be kind of a pivotal moment, actually, and kind of what your eventual life trajectory would be.
Yeah, sometimes I think, as I start having these conversations and talking about it, it's like you can't make this stuff up. This is real. These things I'll talk about happen. So as you talk about me going to St. Rita from my elementary school, a very interesting thing happened to me that really really sort of brings into focus the choices that you make in life and how your parents and what happens to you can impact the rest of your life. So I talked to you, I've said that I'm the CEO of Graham Allen Partners. Most people say, well, who is Allen? I know who Graham is, who's Allen, right? And so Kenneth Allen was my childhood friend. And I'll give you the end of the story first. Kenneth was killed. He was killed in gang violence in April of 1991, just before I was headed to Notre Dame to go to college. And he was my friend since we were 4 or 5 years old. So this was a really, really strong relationship, and sort of we lost him during that period of time. But getting to St. Rita, he's a big part of that story. And so in 8th grade, you had to take an entrance exam to go to St. Rita. We both wanted to go to St. Rita. We played sports and did all of that. I went to my mom and said, hey, will you, I think it was $10 or something at the time you had to pay to take the exam. And my mom, struggled to do it, but she gave me the $10 and I took the exam. Kenneth Allen went to his mom and she said, I'm not going to pay for you to go. You're not going to go to that school. There's free schools here, public schools right here. So you're going to go to that school. Long story short is Kenneth went to the public school. I went to St. Rita. Very shortly after, Kenneth we started to drift further and further apart. And he ended up into things that I was able to avoid because of my surroundings versus his surroundings. So we both grew up watching St. Rita play football. It was a big football school. We loved it. We were always hanging around. It was this old Catholic school in that where the original, it's over 100 years old, where the original, when they put the school there, the community was probably 100% white, Irish, Italian, that type of thing. And then over time, more African-American families started to move into that neighborhood. So by the time I graduated, it was that the neighborhood had changed, but the building was still in the same place. But none of the people who went to the school actually were from that neighborhood. And so we both wanted to go there. And it was, and so that was a pivotal moment in my life, me getting to go to St. Rita and then having him not having the opportunity. He was every bit as talented, every bit as smart. And we just had, obviously that instance was a game changer for both of us.
Wow. I'm so sorry. And what a way to honor him, right? So thank you for sharing that story, Tracy. That's really important. What I wanted to ask you about now was, being at St. Rita's and then getting a visit from Lou Holtz to come to Notre Dame. I mean, head exploding. Tell us about that visit and what did he say to you? What did he say to your mom? How was this another fork in the road for you?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And so, like most kids, I never actually played football, organized football until I went to St. Rita. I literally didn't know how to put on the equipment. And I played basketball and I, like everybody else, I thought I was going to the NBA and all that good stuff, like every elementary school kid. And but I went to St. Rita. I hung around the football team. I just hadn't played organized football on a team. We didn't have those teams like you could play on, and we certainly couldn't afford to go outside of our community and do that. So the point there is that having Lou Holtz by my junior year, I had started to, people had started to notice that I could play football. I guess I'll say it that way, that I started to get a little bit of press and all that other stuff. And so I started to receive letters and mail from pretty much every school in the country, as just like the normal recruiting process happens. And so in my senior year, when I was getting ready to make the decision, Lou Holtz came to my home. And that was an interesting conversation. And I would say he was as comfortable in an all Black African-American community as he was when he went back to Notre Dame and I saw him in that environment. So he came into my home, and an interesting thing about him is he put his feet up on my table as he talked to my mom and I. And now, then it was a little weird, right? It was, almost like is it arrogance, but it wasn't arrogance. What he was saying is, I'm at home. Your home is my home. And when I take your son to Notre Dame, it'll be his home. And he made that clear. But what he and he talked about, if you give us 40 years, now all the other coaches, I guess I would say 4 years, all the other coaches talked to my mom and I about how I was going to play in the NFL. How great I was, and I was going to play it. And they thought if I came to the University of North Carolina, which I was recruited by them, if I came to Michigan or these places, it was that he was going to go to the NFL and he was going to do well. We just believe in his talent and all that good stuff. And Lou Holtz took the opposite approach. He said he may never play at the University of Notre Dame, but if he gives us 4 years, if he gives 4 years to the University of Notre Dame, they'll give him 40. And he told my mom that. And while, everyone expected her to want, man, these people who are telling him he's going to make millions of dollars playing in the NFL, Lou Holtz was saying exactly the opposite. He was talking about the Notre Dame experience and how important that was versus, the idea that you might go play in the NFL one day. Now, he didn't say I couldn't. He just said that that's the unlikely path. The likely path is that he's going to have to do something in the world, and Notre Dame was going to be really beneficial to him in his life long term. And so that conversation with Lou Holtz shifted everything. Any doubts I had at that point, my mom was like, "You don't really have a choice. You're going to Notre Dame." And my mom was working at a hospital as a custodian, and she's telling her friends, that, yeah, Lou Holtz came to my house, and my mother had no clue this was that big of a deal. I mean, she didn't know Lou Holtz from anybody at the time.
Right.
She didn't know anything about Notre Dame, but she when she started to tell people, she kind of started to realize, oh, this is a big deal. Lou Holtz was at your house, and you got pictures and all this other stuff with that. So it was very interesting. He is a figure in my life that is, in my view, was like a father, the father figure. To me, I grew up single parent, I've never seen my father. I'm very open about the fact that if he walked past me on the street, I would have no clue. I mean, that's how, not even a picture, nothing. And so for me, Lou Holtz was that father figure for me, who really changed my life completely.
So tell us more about that, actually. He's such a legendary figure. He coached you for 4 years. And where I'm going with this actually is, I would love to hear about the role of mentors in your life. Lou in particular, what imprint did he leave on you in those formative years? And what were some of the experiences that you had at Notre Dame that kind of shaped who you are today as a human being, as a man in your community, as well as a businessman?
Yeah, I would say the most important ones are so simple. For 4 years, every day, literally every day, we heard Lou Holtz really repeat pretty much the same speech every day. And if you talk to a Notre Dame athlete, you'll hear, do right, do the best you can, and treat other people the way you want to be treated. That was the mantra. And we all lived by it. Now, we all were teenagers and young adults, so we screwed up, and I screwed up. Literally, it took me 4 years to actually learn and believe what he was saying. But it was almost a reprogramming of me from the Inglewood environment and that experience and what it took to be successful and live in that environment, to now going into the Notre Dame environment, which is drastically different than anything I had ever experienced. On one hand, I was in class with, the grandchildren or children in some cases of industry leaders and titans in the world. And then on the other hand, I had come from a community where, the overwhelming majority of those people at some point in their life went without heat or lights or a meal from time to time. And that was the norm. So it was a drastic shift for me in doing that. And what Notre Dame did more than anything is help me believe, I guess, what was possible in life. They helped me understand that it was possible for kids like me to be successful in life. And there was no reason that I couldn't be. It also taught me that I was as talented as the other kids who were successful and the other families. And so the Notre Dame experience, to me, the biggest impact it had on me and the biggest impact Lou had on us is that there was no limit. We could do whatever we set our minds to, and we had to work for it. And if we were willing to work for it, and if we were willing to do right, do the best you can, and treat other people the way you wanted to be treated, that you could be successful. And it was a mind shift where I can tell you, when I was in Inglewood, there was an immediate ceiling. There was no question that there were things that you wouldn't even fathom you had the potential or possibility to do. And so, as I like to say from time to time, Notre Dame let me in the room. And I think it's a big deal for all of us. As I talk to the entrepreneurs, getting in the room so that you can display your talent, your skill, your hard work is a massive, a big part of being successful. Notre Dame let me in the room. Lou Holtz helped to bring me to Notre Dame, and he let me in the room. And then the other mentors in my life, Jay Jordan and Chris Murphy. Jay Jordan, many of you may not know, but I think one of the most successful business people in the country. He runs the Jordan Company, a private equity firm. Used to own companies that you might know, like Fannie Mae Candy. If you ever heard of Fannie Mae Candy, he had a number of those types of investment, but was really, really successful, and also had just this massive imprint on my life. The first time I flew on a private jet, I sat there, we were traveling to Germany with Jay, and I think 2000, we were traveling to Germany, and I'm on this private plane. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, I'm this little kid from Inglewood. I want one of these, right? Now, the plane wasn't the big deal, but it was like, how did I get here? It was unbelievable. So he let me in the room, had massive imprints on my life. He just made me think it was possible. And I think we have to do that with more people. And so that became and is now sort of my passion work. I mean, that's the work I do. I want as many people to be in the room as we possibly can. And I think that way in many cases because I believe it changed my life and made it possible for me to be in the position that I'm in today. So I'm humbled and grateful for all the people, all of my mentors. I think anyone, there's a little bit of a difference in my view between mentorship and sponsorship. And
please elaborate on that. I think that's a really important point.
Yeah. And so, the individuals that I'm talking about who had an impact on my life, they didn't just tell me what I could do or tell me what to do, which is really important. Someone working with you to tell you what to do, but they sponsored me. They brought me into the room. They gave me credibility. And I always talk about, I really borrowed from their credibility in the early days because no one knew me. Now, I had to work hard. I had to do everything I had to do to stay there, to stay in the room. That's up to me. But getting me in the room and then saying to all the people who are already in the room, saying to those people, I believe in Tracy. I believe in him. He's done well with me. That was sponsorship. They put their own names on the line with me. It wasn't in the back room mentoring me and then having me publicly sort of stand out on my own. It was holding my hand in front of people where they could be seen, where if I fell down, it would impact them and their reputations. And so I got sponsorship in ways that I'm just so grateful for, that helped me get to the position that I'm in today.
That's amazing. Okay, thank you for elaborating on that. So I'm curious now. You're about to graduate from Notre Dame, and I'm kind of going in chronological sequence here. I hope you don't mind, but that's for so many new graduates. That is yet another fork in the road.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that this is sort of at the dawn of the internet era. And you graduated from Notre Dame and you decided you were going to go and start a business. So, and at that time, I would like to just sort of rewind for everybody who's a little bit younger than you and I are. That was not a very common thing to do, especially in an emerging industry. So what made you decide to strike out in that particular direction? What was the impetus for you saying, I'm going to go out and be an entrepreneur? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So the first thing I will say is if you have grown up in and I'm just going to speak about the African-American community because that's my experience, right?
Yeah. And this is our community, our 1863 Ventures. Everybody is Black for the most part. So
yeah. So if you have grown up in the African-American community and you have survived it, I believe you are entrepreneurial, right? You have had to be entrepreneurial to survive that environment. You've had to look around corners. You've had to see things that other people didn't see. Walking down the street, you had to understand opportunity and to navigate all of the different social things that are going on there, academically, school, going to a predominantly white school and then living in a predominantly African-American community. All the different things you have to navigate in our community, in many cases, in my view, start to build the skills of entrepreneurship, really having that forward thinking, being a sort of, I guess some people would say, keeping your head on a swivel, right? Because you're constantly looking, you have to see around corners. So the first thing is becoming an entrepreneur, in my view, was really in my genes. And so when you combine those skills and capabilities that were naturally developed, And then you combine those with sort of the Notre Dame, I would say, access, if you will, that Notre Dame gave, and the experience that I had, and then really stopping me from believing that I had a ceiling, really eliminating those thoughts that, hey, there was something I could not do. That you put those two together, and really by the time I got to be clear with everybody. My freshman year, I came to Notre Dame, I was 17 years old, and my whole life had been surviving in Inglewood, right? So it took me a while to get out of that. And I talked about it as reprogramming, right? So I was like, okay, I had to get in there. And by my junior year and my senior year of college, I felt this itch that I was going to do something. The first thing I ever tried to do, the first entrepreneurial thing I ever tried to do was a laundromat. Right. I said, I'm going to start a laundromat, and then people are going to give me all these coins. And I tried to put all this stuff together, and that didn't work out too well for me. Right. So I didn't do that. But then I went to our computer lab, and again, rewinding for many of the younger people, no one had internet in their room. There was no such thing as wireless. Only the really select few had a personal computer, and that computer was not connected to any kind of network, or there was none of that existed at this time. So about my junior year, we all got email addresses. So this is like 1993 or 4, right? We all got email addresses, and I went to the computer lab, and I saw that people were sending messages to one another, but they were really right across the room from each other. But they thought this email thing was so cool. And of course, AOL was the dominant internet provider at the time. America Online, for those of you who are too young to know. It was literally, I think someone in the audience said dial-up. That's exactly right. It was, if you recall the sound of the modem and how it worked. And I said, I think this thing is going to catch on. So I went to the chief information officer at the University of Notre Dame. And I said, I got this business idea. You got to listen to it. And I had written up this thing, and I said, I want to start this business. And he literally told me that it was going to fail. Don't do it. You can't do it. You can't start this business. So here I am, demoralized. I think I got the greatest idea. And I said, all these people are sending messages to each other. Eventually, they're all going to want to do that from their rooms and from their homes and all that other stuff, right? And so people were doing it already. So I wasn't the one who was inventing. This was happening at AOL already, but it wasn't big. I think AOL at the time had 40,000 users. To put that in perspective, they ended with 25 million users. So AOL, it was really, really early stages. And at that time, we had Earthlink and a number of other internet service providers that competed with AOL. So that was my original idea. And then I looked at it and I said, here's what I want to do. And I started, but I hedged a little bit, because when I graduated from Notre Dame, I attended Indiana University at South Bend, because I was like, okay, I need to be a teacher or something. If my aunt in Mississippi had always said, no matter what you do, just make sure if you get your degree in education, teachers will always have jobs. People will always want to teach. So I did that, and the business started to take off a little bit. So I dropped out of that master's course and with 2 classes left before graduation. And I started our company. It started to grow, and the rest of that entrepreneurial story is history. Jay Jordan, for example, Jerome Bettis gave me $80,000 loaned me $80,000. I got to correct that. And if he were on this call, he would say, I didn't give you $80,000. I loaned you $80,000. And I always say he did exactly what I would not recommend a football player who just went to the NFL, who just got a pile of money, to give to his friend who has no business experience and all of those things. That probably wasn't the right thing to do, but he did. He believed in me. Very quickly, the business started to do well. I went to Lou Holtz, who was still at Notre Dame at the time. And I said, Coach Holtz, I think I got this great business. I'm doing really, really well. You're the only other person I know that has any money. And so this was my first no in fundraising, right? So I went to Lou Holtz, and he said, absolutely not. No way.
Oh, was it crushing?
Oh, it was crushing, because he was like my father, right? I mean, it's like a parent telling you no when you know they have it. And he said, I don't invest, but here's what I will do for you. And literally in front of me, he called Jay Jordan, and Jay Jordan picked up the phone and he said, hey, I got a kid you ought to meet. I think he can be special. And then Jay literally the next day flew down to South Bend, and I do mean flew from Chicago to South Bend, which is about an hour and a half. So I don't know what drive. So I don't know why he flew, but he flew to South Bend. Maybe he was going on somewhere else after, I don't know. But he flew to South Bend and he said, hey, I want to have breakfast. And he had them open the restaurant at, it was like 5 a.m. And I think he wanted to see me. He wanted to see if I would get up and be there at 5. And I was there at 4:45. I was sitting out waiting for him when he came down in the hotel lobby, and we got together. And I didn't even know what I didn't know at the time. But what I do remember is I said to Jay, hey, I got this business. I got it started. I got some customers. I think it could be bigger, but I am not looking for a handout. I said, I am looking for a hand up, but I'm not a handout. If you don't think this is something that can work, I'm not looking for any charity. I'm doing okay. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And so Jay, from that, he invested in our company, and the rest is history. We grew the company to be the second largest internet service provider in the country. And then I sold that business in 1999, started my next company, sold that one in 2007, the Cincinnati Bell. And so now you had this kid who had come from Inglewood, who had, and now it's like, I guess I was 24 or 5 years old, somewhere in that range during that time. And I had more money certainly than I knew what to do with. And I often say to people that it reminded me of a Christmas in 1988 that we had, where our heat had been turned off. So it's middle of winter, our heat was off. My mother had lost her job, and we literally had heat in one room in our house from a kerosene heater. And some of the people who have gone through this know what I'm talking about. When your heat's off and you have to figure it out, and you're using the oven to using gas, the oven, electric oven to heat the house and those kinds of things. And so we had heat in one room. My sister had just had a child at 16 years old. And so we had the baby in the one room, my nephew, Adrian, in the one room. And so when I received the money from those deals, that's all I could think about. Literally, I sort of almost became overwhelmed by the thoughts of like, man, where have we come from? And it's an interesting story, but if there's one takeaway that I would say from this that I hope people get is that it is truly entrepreneurism and the ability to do something if you have the right mentors, sponsors, guidance. If they let you in the room and you're willing to work for it, it's absolutely possible. And I believe my life is an example of that. And the only thing that I believe is unfortunate is that it doesn't happen to enough people who come from my situation, because I am not special. I can tell you that. I work hard and I have a passion for what I do, but I'm not special. I think everyone has a gift, and I've been lucky enough to find it. So that's sort of the entrepreneur. You asked a question about entrepreneur, and I took it everywhere. But the point is,
no, that's great. No, that's perfect. That's perfect for our.
I'm a believer in entrepreneur. It's entrepreneurs. They do more than help to provide economic security for individuals. It changes your whole mindset. It gives you a sense of purpose and allows you to use your passion to do good for others. So that's sort of where I am today, partnering with entrepreneurs to build what we hope to be transformational businesses, transforming lives of families. I mean, I can tell you from my perspective, it's not just me, my wife, who I've known since I was 13 years old, grew up in the same community that I did, one block away from me. it has transformed not just my life and all my family members' life and all her family and her family members' lives. It has been an unbelievable experience for us and our family. So, and we're a team. That's the other thing. I told you I grew up with three girls. I grew up with three sisters and a single mom, and now I have three daughters and a niece, so four who are and then my wife, so five women. Women are my rock, and I am. There is no bigger believer in my view than women. They've made such a big impact on my life, and so you know, I know many guys don't like to hear me say it, but I believe the Black woman is the backbone of our community, and I think the next best hope for our community. You know, getting back to, in my view, some of those really strong foundational elements that used to be present in the African American community, which I still think it exists in many homes, and I think the African American woman is our path to it. And I say that as an African American man. So anyway, I'll let you ask questions. So.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's I think, you know, this is our community is absorbing all this, and they are like right there with you, because so many of our entrepreneurs are Black women, right? That I think we tilt toward Black women, female in our community. So super interesting to hear. I'm curious to hear a little bit about, you know, we've been talking a lot about Tracy, the success. Every entrepreneur messes up sometimes. There are always failures, big and small, as you're building a business. You mentioned the laundromat, which was the first failure. I'm curious to know if you would like to highlight one or two business failures that really taught you something about building a business, how to kind of pick yourself up and keep moving forward, and not losing faith that, yes, you were still an entrepreneur, even if you bumbled somewhere. So could you please share one or two stories about that?
Absolutely. Now I got to tell you, I've been fairly fortunate, and I will say that I've been fortunate that the business itself hasn't failed, but inside of the business, there have been a host of failures that really, so ultimately I figured it out, and we worked our way through it. You know, one of the things I would say is what has tested, and so I've been stress tested. I think I guess I would say we built our business during first Y2K, where everybody thought the world was going to end with Y2K, and then very shortly after that, 9/11 happened, and again we went through the stress of the business and all the different things that happened during that, and then the dot-com bust of 2003. Where things sort of just went to, you know what, and then also then obviously in 2008, you know, we had the same kind of thing. So I have been, I'm going to call it blessed to have built businesses during that period of time. That has been the period of time that has been from a company building perspective, that for me has been sort of my prime, if you will. And so I've experienced a lot of those ups and downs. The biggest failures I've had generally are with people, culture and people. An example is I had a very close partner, graduated from Notre Dame together, and you know, we don't have a relationship today, and we don't have a relationship today because navigating partnerships in business is very, very difficult, and understanding that one's success has an impact on others that are around them if they're working together and your partner together. So any entrepreneurs who are going into partnerships with individuals, I think it's really important for you to understand one another at a very, very deep level, and understand what, you know, and then actually understand how, if you have to unwind, how you might do that in a way that preserves the friendship that brought you two together. So I've had some failures in that area. And I've been able to come back from most of them, but the time we went through them, it just was not good and distracting from a business perspective. You know, from a product perspective, I would say some customers, right? I mean, we have our customers we're in the technology space, and we typically are we have historically been in the infrastructure space, and our customers, business customers, they depend on us. We have an obligation to deliver for them. And so we've had our failures in some cases with that. And we've been able to come back from them because we always say, do right, do the best you can, and treat other people the way you want to be treated. And the way I would want to be treated is we would own our mistakes and not hide from them, and be open and transparent about them. And so that's the lesson, I think, that early on I had to go through those things. I had no clue how to get out of them because I had never experienced them. So I had to go through them in order to learn, in the sense that the way out was to keep it simple and basic. And I would tell you, back to Lou Holtz in this situation, it was, I recognized the challenge he had. He had 17-year-olds to, let's call it 21, 22-year-olds. And we all came from all over the world. Some were from Inglewood, some were from Bel Air, right? I mean, all economic backgrounds, white, Black, Hispanic, didn't matter. And he had to some way have a common language where we all understood it. And he kept it simple for us. Can I trust you? Are you committed to building something bigger than yourself? Do you care about me? Simple questions that all of us could understand, that really have, in my darkest times of business, have served to help me come through all of the more difficult situations that I've had. So when you say, what have I learned? I've learned from most of my learnings, what I would consider to be the most important ones have come from relationships, people and culture. Business is about people. It's all about people. Coach Oates would say all business is helping other people get what they want. And if you help enough people get what they want, then you ultimately get what you want. And so if you keep that at the forefront, that what our jobs is to help others, is to be other-centered, to help others get what they want. And if we do that enough times, right, and it doesn't matter what that is they want, right? That's what product market fit is. You want to talk about product market fit? That's what it is. Figuring out what your customers want and helping them get it. And if you do that enough times, then ultimately you'll get what you want, which is success in business, economic security, and the personal satisfaction that comes from helping others.
Agreed. So, and you get that at a visceral level, which is, why you're sort of known for taking an idea and turning it into $1. So I'm curious about the opportunities that you see as an investor. I'm so intrigued by the fact that you have stayed in South Bend. You could have gone to Silicon Valley. Everybody's flocking to Silicon Valley, right? Or they're going to Silicon Alley in New York, or they're going to these hubs, right? I got to be there. I got to be there. No, Tracy is in South Bend, Indiana, and he is investing in geographies and businesses that everybody else is kind of overlooking. So talk to us about the opportunity that you see in these markets and industries while everybody else is off doing their thing.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I have this conversation with all of my former teammates all the time who they all sort of couldn't wait to get out of South Bend. They were gone the day they graduated, and maybe one day after, and they only come back to football games. And so I think my decision to stay in South Bend was rooted in a number of things, but the biggest one is really differentiation. I think what I recognize from my early experience in the internet service provider world was that there were things being created and proven out in Silicon Valley that were not going to make it to the Midwest for 5, 6, 7 years. And that 5, 6, 7 year period where it became, now some people in the Midwest would have it, but before it became ubiquitous, it was going to take, a long period of time to do that, and even longer in secondary and tertiary markets. So when I say the Midwest, I'm talking, maybe Chicago and Indianapolis, some of Detroit, some of the larger cities. But when you start to think about the time it would take for that to get to a secondary or tertiary market like a South Bend, a Grand Rapids, a Kalamazoo, Michigan, a Fort Wayne, Indiana, those types of places, that I had a gap, an opportunity, which is really, I think about, there's a window of opportunity that we could take advantage of that, and we could achieve alpha because we knew the technology. And if we could build that capability over time, we would have the ability to pick and choose the things we wanted to do and invest in these secondary and tertiary markets and really have no competition. And so if we could bring the right amount of capital and talent to those markets, we knew that we had an ability to earn, to create companies that would be meaningful in the world. And so, I love secondary markets, secondary, tertiary markets, off the radar. Generally, they don't get the attention of the very large companies who are competing for those space. And I think it's differentiated. I really do. I think, and another thing I would say about an entrepreneur is, most of the time people say, hey, everybody's doing it this way. Well, there's nothing wrong with doing it an opposite way. In many cases, taking a counter position is more valuable to you individually than it might be if you just sort of followed the rest of the crowd. So finding a differentiated way to do something is, in my view, a smart way to do business. And so secondary and tertiary markets in technology is clearly a differentiated sort of point of view. And then I realized the other thing, most of the customers are in the Midwest. So when you think about where the customers are, especially from a business perspective, a B2B perspective, which is where we spend most of our time, most of them reside in the Midwest, not in the technology. I would say they're the pioneers in Silicon Valley. And then, but the customers come from there. So I just choose to be a builder of technology and to live and work where the customers are. And so we have had a real competitive advantage in that. Just like we think about our another big part of our strategy is that in most cases, my customers have been my largest investors. That has always been the case.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, in almost every scenario, every business we've built, we have partnered with our customers as investors in that business, because we want people who care about the business, who are going to be buying services from it, who are committed to making the business better. And so again, a differentiated approach where others might say, now this is so hypocritical because I'm in private equity. And so I like to give people money and get equity and all that good stuff, right? But I can tell you this, if you can get a customer who believes in you and your business enough and the product that you're delivering to become an investor and a customer, that is far more valuable to the business than taking just money from someone. So we've always had that approach, and we use that even in private equity. We'll put a large percentage in, but we like to see the customers of that business willing to buy equity in that business, because that says they believe in it in a way that is different than someone who could buy a service and then switch later. When you are invested, you're a part of the overall organization. So everybody wins in that.
Super smart, super savvy. Okay. So we have another 10 minutes or so. If anybody in the audience has any questions for Tracy, please drop them into, I would prefer the Q&A if you wouldn't mind. In the meantime, I wanted to ask you, Tracy, about board service. You serve on the boards of 2 publicly traded companies, as well as the University of Notre Dame. You're the chairman of the board of Lippert Components. Pretty awesome responsibility. I would like to ask you about how you built your first boards, and also what benefits you're accruing sort of in your business life serving on boards, because that's a big commitment, a lot of responsibility in addition to running your business. So Absolutely. Building boards and then serving on boards.
Absolutely. I would say the first thing I would say is almost all of our boards, any board that I serve on, really builds on my passion for what I want to do and working with people. And so where a company has a huge opportunity to impact a large number of people, I get really excited about serving on those boards. And how we build, Lippert is many of them I've come into the board and really tried to help to grow and create, really give a different perspective. I believe, one of the things that's really important for me is that I join groups that are really, really smart people, who are really, really good people, but appreciate the perspective that I bring to the room or when I'm coming in. And so, to say the time perspective, I think I'm always building on where I spend my time. It always is making me better in the work that I need to do every day. So when it's almost as if, when you think about Notre Dame, I learned so much. I mean, we have some of the smartest people in the world, some of the most successful people in the world on the board. And I'm really proud to be a member of that board. And so learning for me has just been off the chart. I mean, I will tell you what I learned and what I get to take from that. But I also recognize what I give to it as well. I'm a technology person in the world where cybersecurity is now one of the biggest issues in every company, and especially big publicly traded companies or private but high profile organizations like the University of Notre Dame. So I bring that an understanding of, quite honestly, the African-American community and other minority communities. I bring that. I want that perspective in the room when the decisions are being made. So being in the room and being willing to be open with my point of view and having that point of view grounded in my experiences, which are unique to those groups, which are typically predominantly white. So I believe that is something that has been really, really important and helpful to me. Now, structuring those boards, we got a long way to go. ESG is really important, and I think it's just I'm pretty transparent, so I would just say we don't, from a board perspective, I don't think we've done all we can do to put more women in leadership positions in boards, and more African-American women or more African-American men. We haven't done a very good job of that. So we're working on it every day. And one of the big challenges we have is that, I'm a big believer that if you do things because somebody made you do it, the government or others, it really doesn't last. It's usually one of the first things that you like to cut when things get tough. We shouldn't do it for that reason. We should be bringing on more women, more minorities, more other than, I would say, non-white male is what I would say. We need to do that because it's the right thing to do, and because they bring a perspective that will make the room better, make us smarter, have us make better decisions. And I think if you really get people to understand that context, the perspective that they bring, then we'll do something that will last a long time, and others will start to do it because it's good for their business. And so I say very openly, we can be selfish. And the selfishness is, I think I'll be better because Wendy's on our board. And so I'm having Wendy on the board because I think she's going to make us better, not because I feel like the government told me I needed to do it. So anyway, that's my, as I think about boards and how we need to change, I'm pretty passionate about getting greater diversity on our boards.
Excellent. So we have 5 minutes left. We have a couple of questions from the audience, and then I'll give an opportunity for you to give kind of parting words of advice. So let me take these two questions and we'll try to be as succinct as possible. First question from Barbara, who has a software company, Lily R&B. She's also in Google Black Founders Fund. Mr. Graham, what advice would you give to the Black women in technology who are leading and building technology startups? I often get the you syndrome. People don't believe that I am the founder of the company. Talk to Barbara.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I guess the advice I would give is that number one, it's going to be hard to change everyone. So you got to find a good group of people that you want to be around. But what I would say, Barbara, most importantly, is be very direct about your request for sponsorship and not mentorship. I would say, if you are with someone or talking to a leader who you think where you think they can help you, I would clearly define what I believe I would like this relationship to be. And I believe that most people, most good people, want to help. They want to do something that will help you. I think you have to guide them and help them help you. Because I will tell you, if you grew up in a world where 99% of the time you were around, let's say, white individuals, you don't know how to really help maybe an African American or Latina or Latino individual. We have the obligation for helping, for getting, for being clear about what we want and asking for help. So I would say clearly define the relationship that you'd like to have, what success looks like, and then be direct with whomever you're talking to about the nature of that relationship and what you want. And generally speaking, most good people, they will help you. And that's been my experience where they have actually helped me.
Thank you. Next question from Erna. Any tips on building relationships with prospective customers with investment and growth in mind? I'm building a product for unpaid caregivers. Caregivers will benefit, but so will various groups within the healthcare industry, such as providers and payers. I'm in the early stages of creating pilots and cultivating those relationships, and I'd love your perspective on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, I agree. I think building a product for unpaid caregivers, I mean, that's phenomenal. And I think, you know, another board, I guess I would say, I used to serve on the board of Beacon Health System, which is the largest health system in our region. And I can tell you that there are opportunities and dollars available to invest in those types of innovative care people taking innovative approaches to care. Again, we have to guide them. We have to walk through the door and get to the person and say, I would like you to invest in our business. And so I think part of my advice is being direct and clear. And when I say clear, that means working with someone. I think you guys are doing that at 1863 anyway, working with people to help get my message clear so that you can spend valuable time with people. But I do believe, and I know that there are dollars available to partner with large systems and other healthcare people in the healthcare industry that they would be willing to invest with entrepreneurs who are finding innovative ways to deliver care.
Excellent, thank you. So I want to be respectful of your time, and I won't be able to take the last question, so I do apologize. But I did want to give you an opportunity, Tracy, to share any parting words of advice for our entrepreneurs in the 1863 community. What are the parting words of encouragement and advice you would like to share?
Well, I would first say that I am, in reading the website and hearing from you, Wendy, and others about the work that you guys are doing, I am inspired. And so first, this has been great for me because it inspires me. Second, I would say the advice I would give is to believe in yourself. And there are going to be so many things in business that really will put doubt into your mind about whether or not you can be successful or not. You may have to pivot, right? I think that's a part of it. Stay focused on the customer and really understand and really try to work hard to get the product market fit. And that may force you to pivot from the original idea. But the advice I would say for any entrepreneur is in those times of doubt, you have to believe in yourself. And then I would say have someone else who is going to work with you during those down times, because it is hard and lonely and risky when you put your money and your soul. And a lot of people think about, hey, I put my entire paycheck into this business. To me, that's not the most important thing. The most important is that you put your soul into it. And so, and that gets scary from time to time. And so I would say, believe in yourself is the biggest thing that I would say, and be the focus and single-mindedness that you have in that, I think is really important, and not let others tear you down, because we've been facing or dealing with that for a long time, and you have to believe in you and have others around you who also believe in you.
Wonderful. Tracy, thank you. On that note, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to thank Tracy for spending this precious hour with us. He's incredibly busy. Took me forever to book you for this talk. I'm so grateful to you. Grateful to Marion Hodges for facilitating that. I also want to thank everybody in the 1863 community who has tuned into this talk. It is recorded and it will be posted to our YouTube channel later, and I'll get it out on social media. In the meantime, if I could just have a virtual round of applause and a little bit of love for Tracy in the chat, that would be awesome. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Tracy, thank you. We hope you had a good time with us today.
I did. Thank you so much. You were great. The questions were great. I loved it. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to the 1863 Ventures family. We loved having you here today, Tracy, and thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.